Hey friend, hit subscribe. Takes you a second, but it means the world to me. And please leave a comment on the Revenge Veil channel telling us which city you're watching this story from. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you. Aunt Lorraine, Aunt, said ***. How was the family evening? Her voice was warm and careful, and the question landed like a stone. Rain tapped the magnolia leaves outside my Charleston apartment. The kitchen smelled of tomato sauce and coffee. A plate of pasta cooled on the counter. My thumb hovered over the screen. Claire Bennett, narrator said. What do you mean? Trying to keep my voice even. Aunt Lorraine, Aunt said. We were at Vanessa's. It was lovely, Claire. I thought you knew. Pause. Aunt Lorraine, Aunt added. They were opening gifts. I saw pictures. That single square on my phone changed everything. Claire Bennett, narrator said. I'm Claire Bennett. I'm 30. I'm a physical therapist at a neighborhood clinic. 6 months earlier, my grandmother, Eleanor Hayes, died. Her house was full of things that smelled like Sundays. A carved walnut mirror. A silver tray dulled at the edges. A small wooden jewelry box that clicked when you shut it. The will was explicit, split evenly between the grandchildren. Me, my sister Vanessa, and our cousins Janet and Stuart. Patricia Moore, executor, was named the independent executor. Mom Catherine, mother, was listed only to help identify personal items. I trusted that process. I trusted them. Aunt Lorraine, Aunt sent the photo. Vanessa's living room, the brick hearth, a chandelier throwing warm light, laughter frozen mid-cheer. And on the coffee table, the silver tray, the jewelry box, the gilt portrait that had hung over Eleanor's mantel for decades. Caption. Best Christmas at Vanessa's. Grateful for family. My throat closed. They weren't postponing dinner for weather. They were celebrating without me. First came heat, anger. Then came a cold calculation. If those items were at Vanessa's, distribution had begun without my knowledge. That isn't a mistake. It's a decision. I walked to the sink and set the phone down. My hands shook. Claire Bennett, narrator said. I called my mother. Mom Catherine, mother said. Claire, voice practiced and thin. We thought you were busy. Weather. Work. Mom Catherine, mother, added. We were just keeping things safe. Her calm sounded rehearsed. Claire Bennett, narrator said. Why wasn't I invited? Why are Grandma's things at Vanessa's? Mom Catherine, mother said. Don't make a scene. Family is more important. The phrase landed blunt. I hung up and dialed Patricia Moore, executor. Patricia Moore, executor said. Send me everything. Screenshots. Messages. Photos. A co-executor cannot reassign assets without my consent. Legal words precise. They steadied me. For the next 72 hours I became methodical. Claire Bennett, narrator said. I saved the Instagram post. I screenshot Mom's texts. It's handled. I recorded Aunt Lorraine. I drove past Vanessa's house on King Street and photographed the carved mirror through the front window. I made notes in my phone, dates, times, receipts, names. Beneath the estate fight was a smaller theft that felt personal. Grandpa Harold, grandfather, said to me months earlier. Claire, don't walk in rain if you can avoid it. He bought me a small red Corolla, paid in cash, wrapped the keys in a napkin and said, Grandpa Harold, grandfather said. This is yours. Drive safe. It was his quiet way of saying he saw me. Months later I called him. Claire Bennett, narrator said. How's the Corolla, Grandpa? Expecting his laugh. Grandpa Harold, grandfather said. His silence came too long. Then. They told me Vanessa took it. His breath hitched. That cheap, stubborn car became proof. The pattern extended beyond silver trays. They kept giving parts of my life away. Grandpa Harold, grandfather, then did. He drove to my parents' house with the purchase receipt, my name on it, the date, the cash entry. He stood in the hallway with his cane and declared, Grandpa Harold, grandfather said. That car was for Claire. The sight of him shifted something inside me. He handed me the receipt. I carried it like armor. Back to the estate. Patricia Moore, executor, filed an emergency petition. She asked the court to temporarily remove Mom Catherine, mother, as co-executor, prevent any removal of disputed items, and require an accounting within 48 hours. The hearing smelled like old paper. Mom sat with a tight face. Vanessa looked like a catalog model. Hair, nails, smile all immaculate. Their attorney used a voice designed to deflect. Defense lawyer said. There's been a misunderstanding. Aunt Lorraine testified. I saw the items at Vanessa's. Her voice was plain and true. The judge, a woman with patient hands, read the petition and signed a temporary order. Items were frozen. The house trembled. Some items returned. Some pieces were gone. Later I found small trinkets listed under anonymous accounts on resale sites. A bracelet I remembered vanished. The mirror came back with a missing carved corner. Then Patricia pulled bank statements. Patricia Moore, executor, said, "Look at this. Small sums labeled care or transport. $50 here, $100 there. Over years they totaled nearly $20,000. Each entry looked like a polite theft. No receipts. No oversight. The ledger revealed betrayal. I never wanted public ruin. I wanted the will honored. But the law is blunt and necessary. Choices have consequences. The court ordered restitution where evidence existed. It demanded transparency. The family web started to tear. In the practical world, small kindnesses kept me moving. Miss Delaney, patient, said. She pressed my hand after therapy and said, "You look like you've been in rain." Her voice was small and steady. That kindness held me. Meanwhile, Vanessa, sister, tried damage control. Vanessa, sister, wrote/posting. She posted an apology in a private family group. Vanessa, sister, called and said, voice wavering between contrition and entitlement. Vanessa, sister, said, "Claire, I didn't mean for this to get messy." Her we stung. Who is the we? When someone takes your things. Her husband texted Dad, Mark, father, and offered to make things right. Words did not return receipts. I documented everything. I kept an evidence folder with receipts, phone notes, photos. I trailed lines. I followed Vanessa, sister, once to a charity auction, sitting 3 rows back under a coat brim as she placed our silver tray on a display table. I took a blurry picture. A valet almost caught my eye as I slipped out. The thrill was small and cinematic. I invited Vanessa, sister, to coffee, saying it would be a talk. The cafe windows steamed. Cinnamon and milk hung in the air. Claire Bennett, narrator, said. "Why did you take the car?" I set the creased receipt where she could see it. Vanessa, sister, said. "Grandpa thought you didn't need it. He gave it to me to fix." She sounded practiced. Claire Bennett, narrator, said. I recorded the conversation. She offered explanations that slid into entitlement. She tried to turn theft into spreadsheet math. I kept the audio. There were depositions. The room smelled of stale coffee and paper. Court reporter official, said. "State your full name." My voice sounded small. Claire Bennett, narrator, said. "Claire Bennett." I sat and answered questions for hours while Catherine's face watched from a defense table. Court changes a person. The judge's hammer does not soothe what was cut, but it compels. Judge said. "This court finds probable cause for removal pending accounting." Catherine was temporarily removed. The disputed items stayed in limbo. I felt a tension like a heat lamp. Old friendships shifted. Dad, Mark, father, said. "You're breaking our family." His voice carried the weight of a torn net. Claire Bennett, narrator, said. "You made a choice." He left the room and later filed for divorce. That was not what I wanted. Consequences don't respect sympathies. Months moved like a slow tide. Vanessa's professional life frayed. A client pulled a contract. Neighborhood whispers began. Reputation is fragile in a town where everyone's grandmother seems to know everyone else's name. Between court dates I did ordinary things. I taped ankles, practiced gait training, and listened to an 80-year-old man recite his poems. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and vinyl. Work became an anchor. I also built a quieter investigation. Mara Lewis, dealer, said. When she met me at a diner, she slid a photocopy across the formica. Mara Lewis, dealer, said. Some people move things quick. She had a list of vendors who accepted items with minimal questions, and a storage unit contact under a shell name. Each new name was a node. Luis, ex-accountant, said one rainy evening in my car, flipping a ledger he'd pulled from his old office. Intercompany transfers. He traced payments. Small sums routed to a Nevada consulting firm. then to a Shell LLC, then to a local vendor who shipped items out of state. The numbers looked sensible and ugly at once. We planned small leaks, not to smear but to force accountability. Patricia Moore, executor, said, "We'll place a careful tip." A watchdog reporter ran a piece on an odd charity invoice. A donor pulled a pledge. A board member resigned. The pressure tightened. There were nights I couldn't sleep. I walked dark streets, magnolia scent and damp pavement. I thought of Grandma Eleanor in her garden, tucking plants under frost cloths, humming. I thought of keys wrapped in napkins. I thought of bank statements. Rain tapped like a metronome and I learned to breathe slow. At mediation, the pattern became plain facts. The jeweler authenticated a brooch. Jeweler expert said, "This matches the photo in Eleanor's album." The storage manager confirmed a rental under a shell. The bank flagged small withdrawals. The mediator's pen scratched. Agreements appeared. Some items returned, restitution arranged, a forensic accountant appointed. After the court's decisions, I did something almost sacramental. Claire Bennett, narrator, said, "I kept the little wooden jewelry box. I polished the latch. I set the portrait from Eleanor's mantel in my living room corner. These weren't trophies. They were anchors. The rest, items too large for my apartment, I sold and used the proceeds to start a scholarship." Claire Bennett, narrator, said, "The scholarship began small. $1,000 a year to a local student studying physical therapy who needed help. The first recipient, Lila, student, said, cried when I told her she could stay in school. I thought I had to leave, Lila, student, said. Her relief felt like a stitch. Months later, Mom Catherine, mother, called. Her voice was smaller, thinner, older. Mom Catherine, mother, said, "Claire, I watched you at the hearing. I did not know how to stop it." She did not ask forgiveness. She offered an admission. Fear guided her. Mom Catherine, mother, said, "I am sorry." The apology sat folded between us like a receipt. Claire Bennett, narrator, said. I replied, "I know. Not I forgive." Some things require more than a word. There were consequences I didn't relish. Dad, Mark, father, filed for divorce. Cousins took sides. Holidays changed. Some relatives stopped calling. Vanessa, sister, texted, "I hope you're happy." Claire Bennett, narrator, said. I didn't reply. Happiness and justice are different currencies. But the scholarship grew. People donated in Eleanor's name. The fund sponsored 2 students the next year. Quiet repair multiplied into real help. The ledger balanced differently when a legacy funded futures instead of polished displays. Sometimes I still wind the hinge on the jewelry box and read the small note Eleanor left me. Eleanor Hayes, grandmother, wrote, "My Claire, you always mattered. Be brave." Those words steadied. They were not a weapon, they were a map. If you ask whether I wanted revenge, Claire Bennett, narrator, said, I wanted boundaries. I wanted the record to reflect truth. I wanted to stop being edited out of my story. The method was tedious. Calls, receipts, recordings, patient conversations, quiet meetings with Mara Lewis, dealer, and Louise, ex-accountant. The bore of a deposition room where a clerk's paper coughs sound like tiny verdicts. It was not dramatic. It was persistent. And there were small non-legal victories. Aunt Lorraine, aunt, said. She called more often. Janet, cousin, and Stuart, cousin, said. They drifted back with awkward apologies and casseroles. Miss Delaney, patient, said. She brought lemon bars. The clinic gave me a small window office. I put the portrait above a plant that reaches for light. There were nights I walked past Vanessa's house on King Street and felt only the plainness of a streetlight. I no longer waited for her to notice me at her porch. I wasn't seeking ruin. I was reclaiming household space inside my chest. So here is what I learned. Claire Bennett, narrator, said. Facts are louder than gossip. Documents outpace whispering. A stack of receipts can tilt a family tree. Quiet persistence can be louder than the loudest shout. If your family has a ledger of small decisions that became a redistribution of your life, the favors, we just took care of it. Claire Bennett, narrator, advise. Collect what you can. Make lists. Take pictures. Talk to someone who knows ledgers. Patience is not passivity. Claire Bennett, narrator, said. I kept the jewelry box. I kept the portrait. I started the scholarship. I fixed kneecaps and taught gait patterns. I kept breathing. On evenings when magnolia leaves drum lightly, I open the box, touch the wood, and hear Eleanor's voice in a memory that is mine to hold. Claire Bennett, narrator, Charleston, South Carolina.